Hello everyone, welcome to the Grow Your Future podcast. My name is Zah, your host, and we are joined by the bearded money wizard, Sam Eljerban.
How you doing, guys? How you doing, Zah?
How did you get that name? The bearded money wizard.
Oh, from, who's that from?
A client of ours, I think.
I think he's a fellow bearded man. Oh man, it's a weird, with your moustache.
Yes.
There's not many people have the moustache these days. It's quite a unique feature. But when you see another one, is there a bit of camaraderie in
I know.
in the style?
I know what you're saying because I had a beard during lockdown. I had a beard.
Everyone with a beard's like your mate.
Look, my beard wasn't the best, but because I find it very hard to actually grow one. But I do find that with beards, like if you've got a beard and another person has a beard, it's almost like
you're best friends, man.
You could be Jewish and you could be Muslim, and all of a sudden you're best friends. You know what I mean?
That's pushing it, man. No, but in theory, yes. In theory, no, but it's a weird thing.
But beards are in at the moment. Everyone's got beards now.
Yeah. I think I had mine 2016. So I've been in the long haul, mate.
You're a veteran.
Yeah, man. So I've seen the trend come and go, but I stuck with it. But no,
it used to be a lot bigger, right? Back in the day.
It was a wizard style, yeah. It went down to about my not sternum.
And that's how you got the name, Sam.
Yes.
That's where you were the wizard.
Yeah, outside the office where we work, I was known, like, people didn't know my name. They saw me around, and it's a bit of a unique thing to have quite a long beard. And everyone just knew me. They actually used to call me the pirate. They didn't know who I was. They just saw that pirate bloke in the suit. And I'm like, yeah, I'll take it, man.
You should have worn an eye patch as well. It would have been great for your personal brand.
Oh, mate, anything to stand out, that's a good thing. So yeah.
I think it's a big thing now, personal brand, right? We probably don't talk about it enough on our podcast about how much it changed in the last, I guess, 20 or 30 years where, you know, back in the day it was all about, you know, going to work in a suit and tie or, you know, if you're a blue collar worker, you're in your labouring uniform and all of that sort of thing. But now personal brand and standing out from the pack is so important. So back in the day you wouldn't have thought that, you know, laying bricks, laying tiles, doing a bit of plumbing work would have been interesting, right? Even with accounting, you wouldn't have thought that it was that interesting. But now, all of a sudden, everything's interesting. You got tradies, you know, on Instagram putting up their work. You've got accountants like yourself giving tax advice and all of that sort of thing. Even for guys like us, you know, property investment advisors, they were always looked at as pretty boring people. But now, like, you can make it quite exciting, right? And people are actually interested in you.
It's a way to stand out from the pack, to get your audience, identify your audience and capture them. Look at the famous personal brand builders, Logan Paul, even Kylie Jenner. I don't know too much about what she does, but I read an article about those two.
Kylie Jenner,
Kardashian.
Yes.
One of the Kardashians.
Who's your favourite, Kylie or Kendall?
I don't know, really. Kylie. I say Kylie.
Kylie?
For no reason.
Team Kylie, eh?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But anyway,
Kim or Courtney or Chloe?
Not Chloe.
Not Chloe.
Not Chloe. I'll just maybe Courtney.
Man.
No, I don't know.
Kim Kardashian. She's the queen, man.
Yeah, I know. But
you can't beat her.
True.
They all have personal brands, though, don't they?
But true, and that's where I'm getting to. So. What they were able to do, all these people in that space with such a strong personal brand, whatever they're doing, become successful because they're so well known. They could sell anything to anyone. It's bad if you get to the point where you're doing that, but like selling anything to anyone. But yeah, but they have that sway.
Yeah.
And you know, if we're looking at getting ahead and all that kind of thing, then we might as well adopt what they're doing.
People used to shit on the Kardashians. They still do. You know, but they're the most successful people in the world, really. You know what I mean?
Massive
in terms
marketers.
of brand builders.
Yep.
And you know, we can take a leaf out of their book and go, you know, let's build our own brand. And I think here in Australia, people are very scared and very conservative, and they don't really want to sort of get out there and toot their own horn. But who else is going to do it? The Kardashians are doing it.
You have to toot your own horn, man.
Yeah.
No one's going to toot it for you.
Exactly.
What are we talking about today, man?
The Kardashians. So it's the Kardashians special. This is a wrap-up. So this is going to be our last episode for 2021. And, you know, a lot's happened this year. Lots happened in the last 2 years, actually, and it's been a roller coaster of emotions for all of us. But we're going to close out this episode as our last one for the year, so we can take a break, have a breather. It's been very busy for us, and prepare for 2022. Now, we're super excited. A lot of people are like, there's a new strain out. I don't know.
Omicron.
Yeah, Optimus Prime, that a lot of people are calling it. It just changes. The last one was Delta Goodrum. Who knows what's next?
Who knows what's coming?
Right?
Who knows what's coming?
But we just got to roll with the punches, and I think next year is going to be very exciting. A lot of people are, a lot of negativity out there where people are saying we're going to get locked down again and all of that bullshit. But we don't really want to focus on that. We want to focus on what the things you can do going into 2022. Maybe treat 2022 as 2021 as the start of the decade. Because I truly believe the next decade is where the opportunity is, where it lies, right? It's sort of the roaring 20s again from 100 years ago.
Yeah, touched on a good point there. Focus on things you can control and you'll be a lot happier and less sad. Can't control what's going to happen outside, but you can control what you're doing and reacting and all that kind of stuff in your own time. So I think that's a good point. Moving forward, regardless what happens, focus on what you can control. That way, at least you're doing your best.
Time's going to pass anyway. So I saw a video the other day, and it was a TikTok sort of video from a girl, and she was saying something like, "Oh, so you're 28 years old and you're thinking twice about doing a 4-year course because, you're going to be 32 when it finishes and all of that sort of thing. But if you don't do it, you're still going to be 32.
Time will still pass.
Time will still pass. So you might as well do something. So, I think there's too many people sitting on their hands going, I'm just going to wait,
wait for the perfect time. There's never a perfect
and also
time.
A lot of this negativity that's happening in the world right now is giving people an excuse not to do anything. Right? But in actual fact, time is passing. So if you thought this way 2 years ago, let's talk about property, right? If you thought like this 2 years ago, I'm just going to wait till the world goes back to normal, you would have literally lost millions of dollars.
And it still hasn't gone back to normal.
And I know a lot of people that are still doing that. They're going, we're just going to wait. We're going to wait. Well, you're going to lose money. You know what I mean? Like you're not building wealth in that time.
Yeah. We've had a lot of conversations like that, and it's always coming to an excuse. So you got to get past that excuse, looking for an excuse, and just do what's in your control. If you're able to do it, regardless what's happening outside of your control, then just act.
I think there's too much noise, Sam. So like for example, Melbourne. Let's just use Melbourne as an example. When they went through all of those lockdowns and all of that sort of thing, people were like, you'd be mad to invest in Melbourne. Everyone's moving out of the state. And I actually spoke to a client during the week because I was trying to recommend a Melbourne property. And she goes, but my friend is moving to Queensland. Yeah, but your friend is one of 5 or 6 million people that actually still live in Melbourne. Right? And when they open up the borders... Where are people going to go? Most of them actually go to Melbourne, right? So your one friend is not going to make a difference. And I think people are hearing those types of stories and they're reading it in the media, no international students and all of that sort of thing. And they're thinking, well, why would I invest in Melbourne, right? It doesn't make sense. Now, only in the last couple of days, we're starting to see these articles come out saying Melbourne is going to surge because all of a sudden, once borders open up, that's where people are going to go. Houses are too expensive now. People are going to flock to apartments, and there are not many of them. Now, it's apartments' time to surge. Now, let's say they surge over the next 12 to 18 months. When was the best time to buy that apartment, Sam?
As early as you could.
Exactly. Yeah. Not when it starts going up.
It's going up, yeah.
When Bitcoin hits $100,000 a coin, is it the best time to buy, or is it good when it crashes like I think it has now?
At the dip.
Yeah.
At the dip. No, of course.
Like it's funny, right? Because when Bitcoin was going through the roof, everybody was talking about it. Now Bitcoin's pulled back to about $70,000. I don't know if that's US or Australian. I'm not across it. But you don't hear anybody talking about it. When you think about it, everybody should be buying Bitcoin now.
Because it's already shown you its potential. And going back to the property stuff, is people are getting too fixated on the short term. They're hearing all the short term stuff, massive gains, but when you're buying property, it's not a short-term thing, really, at the end of the day.
They're too short-sighted. They're too short-sighted. You've got to think 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Actually, you know, the new generation, they're going to live to like 150, these guys, you know what I mean? Like have you seen the gyms? They're packed, you know, everyone's healthy. So like you've got to think about it. These guys need to invest for at least at a minimum 10 years.
That's right.
Right? Like 10 to 15 years is actually, you are a short-term property investor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 15 to say 25 years, you're probably medium to long-term. So, you know, like 10 years is a minimum.
Yeah.
And even if you sell after 10 years, it's still short-term. So I tell these people that refuse to get into the market now because of their friend had moved from Melbourne to the Sunshine Coast. Their one fucking friend, right, out of 6 million people, it just... You know what? We should do a podcast purely on the ridiculous objections that our clients give us.
We could.
Right?
Yeah.
But I think they won't like us afterwards.
They won't be our clients anymore. No, but they're coming. I guess look, it's a concern of theirs, but it's just
there's lessons and there's comebacks to those to those objections, right? And there's reasons why we push our strategy. And I think where people fail to realise is, apart from all of this noise that's happened in the last 2 years, like if you continually invest, you know, every year or every couple of years, and you just keep acquiring and accumulating assets, you're going to win. Like it's always going to go up. Yeah, it might come back 5-10% at times, but you're always going to win.
That's right. There's short-term fluctuations, blips on the radar. But if you could go back in time 40 years ago to buy property nearly anywhere in Australia, I think most people would want to do that.
Oh, you know,
so it's just a matter of learning history.
Talk to anyone who's 50, 60, 70 years old.
Yeah.
One of their biggest regrets always is not buying enough property.
Exactly. Do you want to go on to our first point?
I actually don't. Was that the first point?
That was a good intro.
This is your podcast, bro.
It's not,
Take it away.
It's my podcast, but it's all about your forte. So it's a good combination. All right, first point. So we're doing a wrap of property in 2021 and maybe just insights into 2022, just a bit of see what's going to happen
Preparation.
next year. So first one I wanted to touch on is pretty much property being up across the board. So 2021. Different type of year. In Australia, property's not always been up in every state across the board, so it's a new phenomena. I liked an opinion from an economist in the US. I watched some of his stuff. I watch a lot of different types of opinions online and social media, and then try and find, you know, what I can see is the most truthful thing, or the most logical thing of all these commentators. This guy, Peter Schiff, he's a gold bug. He loves gold, but he also commentates on all asset classes. And he said, even in America, I think across the board in the world, properties has all gone up. And more or less what he's saying is it's not necessarily properties appreciating across the board. Appreciation occurs through maybe the place being in more demand. You're renovating the property, so it's increased its forced value appreciation. But when property across the board goes up, it's not necessarily appreciating, it's the effect of inflation on the market. So I just like that opinion, because what it's saying to me is that down the track, not all property is the same. Some, you know, everything's going up across the board, but that won't necessarily last. So you still really got to pick and choose how you're going to buy.
So let's just go back a step, just for our listeners, so they understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
When you say property has risen across the board, what you're referring to is every market has increased in the last 12 months. We're looking at 20 to 35%, right?
Insane.
Like, which is pretty standard. Even the shit areas, like, they've gone through the roof. Yeah. So if your portfolio sits at $10 million, you've made between $2 and $3.5 million, right, in equity, which is, it's amazing.
In one to 2 years, it's huge.
And and even if you had held property in less desirable locations, in markets that don't normally grow, you still would have made money. So to our listeners, Sam is saying that this is a once in a lifetime sort of thing that's happened. This is not everyone's looking like a rock star right now when it comes to property.
Good point, yeah.
And but what usually happens, and what Sam's saying is, what usually happens is when property goes up in value, it's due to its demand on its location. It's due to the demand on that forced value through maybe renovation or development. It's for example, Bondi will grow more than, say, Mount Druitt because of the incomes in the area of Bondi are higher, and the desirability is probably a lot higher in Bondi.
Yeah.
Nothing against our friends in Mount Druitt, right? So, but what's happened, Mount Druitt's gone up, Bondi's gone up, everything's gone up. Why? Because the cost to replace has gone up, right? Because replacement cost is inflationary.
Exactly. So that was just one thing. So I don't know how far. I think with what's going on in the economy in 2021 and looking forward, it's not going to change too much. I think that kind of general direction of property going up is going to stay with us, probably till the interest rates start changing slightly. But that kind of across the board growth, I think, is here to stay temporarily.
Okay, so for our listeners that are trying to give it a crack themselves and they're not under the guidance, direct guidance from us, I guess what they need to consider is not just buy anything.
That's right.
So what you're saying, Sam, is if they do buy anything, they'll probably make money, right, in the short term. Yeah. But it's when the market comes off the boil, it starts to correct, maybe 5-10%, which it will happen. Which market do you want to be in?
That's right.
Do you want to be in a strong market, or do you want to be in a weak market where it's highly volatile and all of a sudden it falls out of its arse?
Exactly.
I know which market I would want to be in.
Exactly. So I guess be careful. I think still growth is there to stay, but you really still want to be choosing wisely is the end.
I think the issue is that people think that they can just make money anywhere, and if they just buy anything, they'll make money, which is the truth. In the short term, they will, especially if inflation has got to do with this. But it's more so, you're going to hold that asset for 20, 30, 40 years. So in 30, 40 years, when you've got grandkids or you're going to pass these assets down to your kids, what would you be proud to own? Would you be proud to be owning a property out in the sticks that doesn't really produce that much rental income, hasn't really grown much in value, has been highly volatile throughout its whole life of owning it? Or would you like to be in a strong market where rental growth is consistently increasing and capital growth is quite consistent as well? Like, I know which market I want to be in. 100%. So people have to be really careful now, because they're working within budgets. So a lot of people don't have the money to spend on good quality assets in good quality locations. And that's where I guess, teaming up with a team like us, we can show you the way.
It's not getting caught up in the euphoria of the whole property market going ballistic. Don't get caught up in it.
FOMO.
Yeah. Like, look at it seriously still. Okay, interest rates. They've been on hold pretty much through the whole pandemic. We've touched on interest rates before on other podcasts. Interest rates, to me, or when I look at economics, is all about, if they're low, it's to try and stimulate activity. So that's what they're wanting to occur in our economy, and there's no sign of them changing moving forward. So interest rates, in relation to property, aren't changing anytime soon. That's obviously going to continue this demand for property, whether it's good property or bad property. That's going to continue. It happened 2021. It's going to continue 2022, and I think that's going to cause some issues with pretty much what you touched on: inflation occurring within the materials used for property. So not only are the prices of existing properties going up, but there's so much demand to build new ones that the actual costs of materials, metal, timber, all that kind of stuff is going through the roof as well. So the actual build costs are going crazy.
We've also got a labour shortage.
In labour.
And because we don't have, the super hard workers from overseas coming in anymore, because us Aussies are so lazy. We don't want to do the hard work.
We've got JobKeeper, man. Why do we have to go?
So we're now, I think I read an article the other day where dishwashers are now in restaurants are now, commanding $50 an hour to work because there's a shortage of those types of workers out there. So, that's the same in the construction industry. We're experiencing it, a shortage in labour, which means that the trades that we do have available to us are pushing up their prices, which is, I guess they call this a perfect storm where everything's pushing up the price. Like it's not just low interest rates; it's everything else, and the demand is also coming from owner occupiers, not so much investors.
Okay, so there's an increase there.
Well, booms are usually driven by investors chasing a yield, right? Yep. Where this latest boom has been led by owner occupiers, wanting more space, wanting a tree change or sea change. Yep. So it's very different to the other booms we've experienced.
Which is a good point to my next point, regional growth. So you're saying tree change, sea change. People that pretty much are buying not as an investment. They're looking to move their place of where they live to a nicer area, potentially in the country, near the ocean, blah, blah, blah. Do you see that trend continuing? It did occur in 2021. In 2022 and onward, what do you think is going to happen? As
long as they keep these borders shut between the states, or they have heavy, restrictions on what you can and can't do when you enter these states. I think, especially this summer period, because not many people are going to be travelling internationally, what's going to happen is everyone's only confined to their state, and they're going to be travelling into those regional areas. What's going to happen is these people from the big cities are going to go to these regional towns, and they're going to go, hey, why don't we buy a property here? And because they're exposed to it, right? And now people can work from home. So I think next year the regional areas will increase in value because they're highly desirable now. How long will it last, Sam? That's another question. I truly believe that it won't last forever because people will live there and they'll like it and they'll enjoy it and all of that sort of thing. But the main financial hub of a state is its capital city, right? And if you're thinking of Victoria, New South Wales, and Queensland, it's Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane. Now, people need to be close to those financial hubs. When people first come from overseas, which we're about to open up, right? I think they just delayed it another 2 weeks or something because of Optimus Prime. But if they open that up to say 1 million people or whatever it is that they're opening it up to, they don't go, hey, I'm going to go to Wollongong. I'm going to go to the Central Coast. No, they go to Sydney. They go to Melbourne. They might not even go to Brisbane, right? So what we've got to understand is where the opportunity lies is in the cities. And we've also got to understand that people can't work from home forever, right?
They have to go to the office sometime.
Yeah, they have to be exposed to other people. You need to meet more people. You need to have that social aspect with work. Yes, you can work from home and get the job done. But if you want to progress in your career or even progress in business, you need to be sitting with people, right? Like I never ever close a deal over the phone. I never close a deal over Zoom. It's always in person. And that doesn't mean I have to go to the office to do that, but you need to meet people, right? That tells you something.
I think what people should look at is, regional areas generally have a lower price point. Agreed? It's usually a lot lower than the higher demand capital city areas and things like that.
They're sort of the same now.
They're sort of the same. But I think where I want to go with this, just briefly, is that I think we have to maybe treat the regional areas sort of like a mining town now, because you're getting a temporary demand. So in a mining town,
it's like a short spike.
So I think people might still buy there.
Your mate Peter Switzer.
Switzer report.
Mr. Burns.
What has he said?
He says that it's like a sugar hit, where it's something that we want now, and it's so highly desirable now, and it's going to come, I guess, crashing down like a sugar hit when people realise that, hey, I can't live in the sticks forever. Yes, it's nice for now when the city's in lockdown, but when the city's flourishing and all the infrastructure's here and, you know, all the fun stuff's here, like, you know, sometimes you go to these regional towns, you can't get a feed after 8 p.m. You know what I mean? Like, it's very, very annoying. So, like, if you had lived in the city, like, for example, me, I wouldn't be able to live in a regional town. I've lived in the city for too long. So there's a lot of people that are like that, that are so used to that convenience. But in saying that, from an investment point of view, right, it might work because you're still getting the yields, all of that sort of thing. I think the media focuses more so on capital growth, which is what we say is a one-dimensional way of looking at property investment. But from an investment point of view, I think gone are the days where you go, hey, I'm going to invest in a regional town for the affordability because now it's just as expensive. So, you know, I would be steering away from it. My suggestion would be maybe go to an apartment in a major city because no one's really buying that yet. But it's the next thing to take off. Like houses have had their growth over the last couple of years. It has to slow down from an affordability point of view. Like you've got houses on the Central Coast now for $2-3 million, and you're not even on the water, right? Like it's crazy how much, and that's going to rent for how much? Not much. You know, your yield's going to be quite low. So this always happens. Houses in a boom, houses go first because it's what everybody wants. But then what happens is people go, okay, what's the next best thing? Apartments and townhouses. Right? So if you can get an apartment or a townhouse in a major city, I think Sydney's probably still too expensive, but Melbourne and Brisbane offer those opportunities. A lot of people, they turn their noses up to apartments because they're like, oh, you know, they never grow, and it's a pretty general sort of statement to make. But I think that's where the opportunity lies over the next 12 to 18 months because when it happens, you won't want to be buying them because they'll be too expensive. Yeah.
Slightly steering away from property, even though it's a very property-focused podcast today, I wanted to get your thoughts on prior and post mindset of COVID. So before COVID came, I, as well as probably a lot of people in Australia, were just plodding along. They weren't maybe taking their goals seriously. They weren't maybe doing as much as they can.
Right? Because you're just cruising.
Because everything was easy, you know, you're probably doing your thing. There was no pressures on you to act. There was no, you know, booming economy
There's no sense of urgency.
No urgency or nothing. So obviously we've seen that. So 2021 should hit the fan, or 2020. We're going through that still. You know, we're at the tail end of the pandemic, hopefully. What do you see people's mindsets? Do you see that as it's woken people up to continue moving forward and achieving goals and doing things, or do you think people are going to go back into their shell?
You know what? It depends, right? It depends what people are like already. Like, there's a lot of people that are still fucking around doing nothing. You know, and there's people out there that are operating with a sense of urgency because this lockdown has taught them that they need more than a job. They need more than a business, right? They need more than just one investment property. They need more than just their home. So it's kicked them up the arse, which is, you know, the reason probably why we're so busy at the moment. Also, interest rates are low and all of those sort of things. But I'm seeing a lot where people are going, I don't want to rely on my business. I don't want to rely on my boss, right? So they start taking action in terms of, okay, how do I, not so much start investing, but just develop a plan on what to do. And it's funny when I talk to a lot of people where they don't have a plan. It's like, because we always encourage people to come in and see us, and there's no obligation to sign on with us, but the worst thing that you can take away when you leave us is a plan. And most people don't have a plan. Like, I meet people all the time and I say, okay, what's the objective? What is it that you want to do? Oh, we've never really thought about that before.
I never thought, yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Like, I met some clients this week where, they're not clients because they didn't sign on, but I asked them, I go, well, what's the objective with getting into property investment? And they were like, oh, we just want to get into the market, and, you know, we're thinking about buying an old place and then just doing it up and maybe moving into it. I go, that's your plan? Is that it? Like, that just, I wasn't speaking down on them. I just wanted to see if there was anything more out of that. And they go, oh, well, that's all we've thought about so far. I'm like, you need a plan.
Yeah.
Like, what's the objective? Oh, we want to build wealth and retire. Well, that's not going to get you there. Like buying the shitbox house in a less desirable location, because that's the only market you can afford in. Doing a renovation in that location, hoping that you're going to make money, and then what from there?
What they're lacking really is a strategy, like you're saying. There's no plan. They know what they want to get to, but there's no steps.
And you know what? They're not trained to have that strategy, so it's okay not to have it. But at least go and seek that advice and ask, hey, I need to create this plan for myself. You know what I mean? So I think what COVID has done, it's the people who are quite driven, they're saying, all right, I now need to hurry up and get this stuff sorted. And I think one of the good things is that people haven't been able to travel, they haven't been able to do much, so they haven't really been able to spend their money. Now, we have heard stories of people going out and spending money on things like jet skis and, you know, booking holidays well in advance, and because they're bored, right? They're buying cars, even cars are going up. But, you know, the smart ones are putting that money away and putting it into assets, whether it be crypto, shares, their business, property. So I think it's been a really good wake-up call, because some people, you know, well, a lot of people, they had to rely on the government.
The government, yeah.
Right? Like when you have to rely on the government, you're at the mercy to them, right? And then they tell you to get the vaccine, for example. You got to fucking get it, right? They're feeding you. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying you've got to get it or not. I don't want people to, you know, write into us and tell us, you know, their views on that bullshit. But like, you've got to see how the government sort of controls you, right? Now, if you don't like to be controlled, and I know most people don't, you've got to make change.
You have to become financially independent. So I think that's one lesson people should come away from. Hopefully it's changed your mindset. So 2021, 2022, moving forward, if you weren't already on that path to getting a bit more independency in your life, you know, if COVID came along and took your income away, if COVID came along and you realize asset prices are going up and you're not in the market and you're falling behind in both spaces, maybe that's something to really reflect on and make sure, okay, I don't want this to happen again. What can I do? And start acting.
And it's not just about property, Sam. It's like skill up.
That's right.
And get into something that doesn't require you to be somewhere, or train yourself up to learn something where you can work from home and produce more value than just sitting back and getting a $750 check a week from the government.
Indeed. All right, moving on to the more property specific stuff. I wanted to go through the East Coast. That's where predominantly we look. We're looking at the property market and focusing on those three capital cities. Well, two really, but Sydney, we live here. So I just wanted to go through Queensland. So 2021, we all know it's been at the top of the media all the time. 2021, Queensland's probably, I think, one of the highest growing states with property values.
It's probably the strongest market in Australia
Strongest
right now.
market. So I think from what we can see in the economic factors, present and not changing moving forward, that trend doesn't seem to it's not going to change. I think that's going to continue to happen in 2022 and beyond. We have mentioned on previous podcasts the Olympic Games and what we think that might have on Brisbane and surrounds in the next 10 years. And I've looked, and mate, to be honest, there's $100 billion, from what I could see, $100 billion worth of projects just like starting to be done. Like that's after the airport second runway's already been done. There's another $100 billion of infrastructure being poured into that over the next 10 years. So even after COVID's effect on the market and the interstate migration, I think that infrastructure spend being so huge, I just don't see it slowing down anytime soon.
Look, Brisbane's an exciting city right now. They're trying to create this new world city where it's on par with, say, Sydney and Melbourne, where, international people, when they come through, they choose Brisbane. They want to, it's a very quite similar to, I guess, Singapore, where the weather is quite similar, and there's a lot of money in Singapore. So those are the types of countries that they'll be targeting for people to come. I'm super excited for Brisbane because I think being a part of an emerging market like that is just so much different to say being in Sydney, where it's so mature. There's nothing much more that's happening here.
Would you say there's not much opportunity?
What are they building a tram on George Street for the fucking fifth time, right? Like it's just what are they doing there? What are they doing that for, right? That's not very exciting. I can run faster than that thing, right? There's not much shit happening in Sydney, right? However, there's a lot of money here, right? So if you want to do business, it's quite a good city to live in. But in terms of exciting new projects like what you just said, 100 billion or something in infrastructure, like it'd be pretty cool to be living up there now and living the next 10 years experiencing that. Now, why is Queensland, I guess, number one on our radar? Well, purely on affordability. Affordability is what drives prices, because you've got to think about it, right? If you're in a location, as in a suburb, where a weekly family income is at, say, an average of that suburb, $4,000 a week, right? Now in Sydney, if you had that location, it'd probably be the median house price would be $4 or $5 million, right? In Brisbane, it's probably 1.5 mil. Now you got to think about those households that are on that income, right? Where's the value? The value's in Brisbane, right? Because the location has the same people that was in the same location in Sydney. The people are the types of people are the same. They earn the same amount of money. So you're around the same demographic, but you can get so much more bang for buck. So that's where the value proposition is. And this is why so many people are selling their assets in Sydney for super high prices, because it's so expensive here. Taking their $4 or $5 million, buying a $1.5-2 million place in Brisbane in an equivalent location. They're not downgrading at all, right? And they've got $3 or $4 million in the bank to live off, tax free, because it was a principal place of residence. So the migration will continue for the next 10 years. So even with I get the infrastructure and all of that sort of thing, but even if that wasn't happening, I feel that, especially now the people can work remotely and all of that sort of thing. It's going to happen. I think it's going to happen. I've actually got people, very successful people in my network who have done that. Is it going to kill Sydney? No, because more people are going to come. Is it going to kill Melbourne? No, because more people will come. But will Brisbane grow? Hell yeah.
It's a good point. The market really there is driven by both the home owner chasing the lower price point home and the investor going for the yield, compared to the capital cost. So it's really a market that's getting both prongs of demand going at it. Like
Correct.
It's getting hammered.
Yes.
Right?
So Sydney is purely really owner occupied, because people want to live here. Their families are here. Like they'll pay overs, right? Investors aren't really here because the yields aren't here. It's so expensive. To buy an apartment even is like over $1 million. Whereas in Brisbane, you can buy a really nice apartment in a really nice location for like $450,000. You get a really good yield. If you wanted to live there, great, right? You're in a great location. The value is just there. And there's a lot of money in Brisbane now. Like back 15, 20 years ago, Brisbane was a piece of shit, right? Like you wouldn't want to hang out there. Now the restaurants are packed. You know where you can tell coffee's good, right?
Is that the trick?
Well, all the nice cafes.
It's an indicator.
Nice cafes are starting to open up. And what's really interesting to see is that the restaurants are packed, the cafes are full, the shopping centres are full. Why? Because people have got money to spend there. They're not spending all of their income on housing and eating 2-minute noodles from Coles, right? You go here to my local shopping village, right? Restaurants are quiet. Coles is packed. Why?
No one can afford to eat out.
Yeah, exactly right. Because they're spending all their money on rent, they're spending all their money on the mortgages, and they've got nothing left over.
Nothing. Okay. Very good point. All right, moving back down to, say, Sydney. All right. Sydney, as you said, has no...
Shitney.
It's got nothing going for it really at the moment. It hasn't for a long time.
It's quite negative, man. It's quite negative. A lot of people are negative about Sydney right now.
Right. Even people trying to buy their own home, even though that's the market, Sydney is a market for home buyers, even that's out of reach. So from a property perspective, it's just offering no opportunity, I think, at all.
If you come from old money
Yep.
and you're quite equity rich, and you know, I don't know if we've got those listeners on here, but if you do come from that old wealth that has held property in Sydney for generations, there's plenty of opportunities. You can buy a $17 million Vaucluse mansion and in 3 years double it to 35 million, right?
Yeah.
We read that article during the week.
Correct, yeah.
But who has a lazy 17 million in equity lying around? Not many people. But for regular guys like you and I, you know, it sort of doesn't make sense.
Yeah. People trying to grow your future. They've already got their future sorted out. But if you're trying to grow your future, there's no opportunity there.
Yeah, and you know, like if you start from nothing and you're still worth, you know, a few $1 million, it still doesn't make sense to park your money in a Sydney market when you can get a better return elsewhere.
Indeed. And what do you think moving forward? So I think Sydney as a capital, it probably will continue on the upward trajectory unless something major happens. But I don't see that simmering down. It's always been a constant sort of upward trend.
I think houses are going to sort of reach their, not peak, but they'll probably slow down quite a bit. And now apartments and townhouses, it's their time to sort of catch up.
Is that because they're out of reach and they have to go for the other?
Yeah, so let's think about a location, right? Someone's you know, they're hell bent on living in, say, let's say Bellevue Hill, right? And prices have just gone through the roof in terms of for houses. They can't afford houses anymore, but they still want to live in Bellevue Hill. Why? Families there, kids go to school there, they're familiar with it, right? They love it. So what's the next best thing?
Townhouse or apartment?
An apartment.
Yeah.
So apartments are at a very good price point now. I'm not too sure Bellevue Hill apartments are still cheap, but I know that in Melbourne and Brisbane, apartments offer really, really good value for money. Now's the time to buy. Like Melbourne houses are so expensive. Brisbane houses are also expensive. You know, there's an apartment project we're working on in Melbourne on the outskirts, about 9 k's from the CBD. The median house price for a house is over $2 million. Wow. But you can get a 1-bedroom apartment for $450,000. So the gap, it has never been bigger. And that gap will close. It has to. So I truly believe that in these capital cities, apartments and townhouses, you know, that's where you should be investing your money in now. It may not seem like it now because no one's investing in it. But that is where the value proposition is, and by the time you're settled, you've got a tenant in there. 1 or 2 years go down the track. What's going to happen is you're going to see that growth.
Yep. And a segue into Melbourne. So you just touched on an example there. So you got Queensland going gangbusters. Everything's happening up there. A lot of that driven by, well, not a lot, but part of it driven by homeowners moving from Sydney and Melbourne up to the Queensland state. With that departure from Melbourne, obviously that's going to have an impact on the market there, which we have sort of seen, I would say, but moving forward. So just touching on that example with median house prices being so high, townhouses and units, apartments being quite low in that ratio, do you see that as the opportunities now in Melbourne moving forward, 2022?
100%. Everybody next year should be considering, but even townhouses are getting expensive in Melbourne. I think apartments, 100%, because it's had such negative press over the last 2 years because of COVID and people, their lockdowns and people moving out of the state and all of that sort of thing. But Melbourne is a very strong city. It's probably stronger than Sydney, right? So it will bounce back. And these people migrating out of the state have very little effect on the current market in Melbourne. It is too strong. Okay, you take 50,000 people from, say, 5 million people or 6 million people. It's not that much. Now, when they open up the borders and all of these people, the Europeans, the Asians, when they come here, a lot of them will go to Melbourne. Why? It's the most cultured city in Australia, right? Even more cultured than Sydney. Okay, so once that immigration opens up and everybody moves to Melbourne, those 50,000 people, your little friends that have gone up into Queensland, don't mean shit no more, right? They're going to push those prices up. People that live in Europe, Asia, America, they're all used to living in apartments. It's only Aussies who are fussy.
Yeah.
And think about it, right? What has gone up in the last 2 years?
Land.
Houses. Right? So lead.
Land.
Oh, I thought you said lead. I'm like, the fuck? We're talking about commodities now. So houses have gone up.
Yes.
Why have houses gone up? Who has been locked in Australia this whole time? Aussies. Right?
Very good point.
Not migrants. But this country was built on migrants. Right? So when they open up the floodgates and allow 1 million, 2 million, 3 million of foreign people who are used to living in apartments that do not give a fuck about houses in the sticks because they want a tree change. They want to be close to the cities, right?
Yeah.
What's going to increase in value?
Yeah.
The apartments. Because there's no new supply coming onto the market either. So all of the Aussies that have gobbled up all of the housing, yes, it's shot up in price because it's only been the Aussies here. But wait till our friends from the Philippines come, from Malaysia, from Lebanon, right? Everybody comes over and they're used to living in apartments. They're like, oh yeah, I'll buy one of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a very good observation. I haven't heard that, that observation.
Heard it here first, Sam?
No, it makes a lot of sense. It's very logical because Europeans, mostly anyone outside of Australia, like you said, they're more accustomed to the cosmopolitan life, right? Living in the people from France, anyway, Italy.
Sex in the city.
They love it. And where are all the migrant, enclaves? They're in the cities. So when the floodgates...
They're used to it.
They want to stick with their people.
They're used to it. So when I meet people, and they go, oh, I don't like apartments, right? And I go, why don't you like apartments? I don't believe they grow in value. Well, obviously, you're Australian because you only like a house,
yes.
right? Which is understandable because in an immature country, houses have always worked. But we're going into that transition now where we're becoming a mature, developed country, right? Where our population now need to live somewhere.
Yep.
They can't all live in houses. And this is why we're going through that transition now. After this boom, right? If anyone owns a house for the generations to come, you've come from a wealthy family. So if you go to Singapore, for example, if you say you're going to buy a house, wow, you're like royalty.
Yeah, minted.
Right? You're minted. So even if you say, this is how far it's gone in Singapore, even if you say, I'm buying, they call it a condo, right? Yeah. Condominium, right? An apartment. You're considered rich. Do you understand? But here in Australia, because we've had it so good, because we've got so much land and we're so immature and not everybody owns everything yet, everyone thinks, no, houses is what we need to be buying. But into the future, it's apartments because it's all people can afford. Now they've got this new build to rent model out there now where these developers are building specifically to rent and they're only building 25 square meter apartments. Why? So people can afford to live in the city.
Really?
It's a good yield, right? Build to rent means that the developers are building them and they're holding on to it. So it makes sense to them commercially, right? But it also provides affordable housing for example, let's say the barista that works in our coffee shop that doesn't earn big money but needs to live close to the city. That would suit them, okay? So, we are changing, right? Not just as a nation, but as a world. And Australians need to learn that because we've been so sheltered here thinking that, it's all housing and it's, everybody should own land and all of that sort of thing. It's changing.
So really to be a savvy investor, being such a young country, it would be very wise to look at other more mature countries to see what's happening.
Well,
right?
let's go back to Singapore. Apartments, right? It's so mature that even apartments are giving off low yields.
They're that high in value, in price.
That's right.
Yeah.
Where yields for apartments in Australia are still quite strong, right? Dependent on where you buy. So the opportunity still lies there. So very interesting, very, very, I guess, against what you hear in the media. But it's what I'm doing. I'm buying apartments probably every 2 or 3 months. I'll buy an apartment.
And in 2 to 3 to 10 years' time, you'll be laughing.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
It's all long term. It's all long term.
So, is that it?
I think that's it.
That was a long
That's,
one, man. Fuck, I'm out of breath.
It's been a long year too, man. Yeah,
It's been a long year. Yeah. Well, I want to take this opportunity to thank our listeners and thank our fans and supporters. Like we're amazed at the feedback that we've got.
The love.
Yeah.
It's really nice.
We don't actually get paid we actually pay to do this, right? Like we don't actually get paid to do this. We really enjoy what we do, and we couldn't do it without you guys listening and liking our stuff and sharing our stuff. And look, next year is going to be a very exciting year for us. We're going to look at sort of potentially rebranding this whole thing. So yeah, keep following us. We want to wish you guys a very, very Merry Christmas and a safe and happy New Year. And we will catch you in 2022. Peace.
See you guys.